The crystal throne room sparkled with cold light as Empress Vexantha looked down at the small creature standing before her. The human ambassador was tiny compared to her massive form. Her skin was pale blue and covered in ancient scars from 1,000 battles. Her eyes glowed red with anger as she studied the pathetic being that dared to speak to her. "You are Admiral Sarah Chen," the Empress said. Her voice echoed through the vast chamber like thunder. "You represent the species called humans?" Sarah stood straight and tall despite being afraid. She wore her blue uniform with pride. The medals on her chest showed she was a brave soldier. But she had never faced anything like this before. The alien ship around her was bigger than any city on Earth. The walls were made of some strange metal that seemed to bend light itself. "Yes, Your Majesty," Sarah said. "I speak for all of humanity." The Empress laughed. The sound was like breaking glass. "Humanity," she repeated. "Such a grand name for such a small species. You have been in space for what? 50 of your years? We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years." Sarah did not answer. She had been warned about this. The Zephyrian Empire controlled most of the known galaxy. They had destroyed entire species that refused to obey them. Earth scientists had detected their massive fleets moving toward human space 6 months ago. That was when the governments of Earth had chosen Sarah to make this desperate journey. "Your species interests me," the Empress continued. "You are young and weak. Your ships are slow and ugly. Your weapons are like toys compared to ours. Yet you came here to my flagship to speak with me. Either you are very brave or very stupid." "Perhaps both, Your Majesty," Sarah replied. The Empress smiled. Her teeth were sharp like knives. Around the throne room, dozens of alien warriors watched the conversation. They belonged to species that had long ago submitted to Zephyrian rule. Some looked like giant insects. Others had too many arms or eyes. All of them served the Empress. "Now, I will make this simple for you, little human," the Empress said. "Your species has 2 choices. You can submit to our rule. You will give us half of everything you produce. Your people will serve our empire. Your soldiers will fight our wars. Your scientists will work for us. In return, we will let you live." Sarah felt her heart beating fast. This was what they had expected, but hearing it made it real and terrible. "What is the second choice?" she asked. "Death," the Empress said simply. "We will destroy every human world. We will burn your cities and turn your planets into dust. Your species will be forgotten. This is what happens to those who refuse our generous offer." The throne room became silent. Sarah could hear her own breathing. She thought about Earth, about the billions of people who were counting on her. She thought about her daughter who was waiting for her to come home. She thought about all the human colonies that were just starting to grow among the stars. "I need time to discuss this with my government," Sarah said. The Empress laughed again. "Time? You think time will change anything? Very well. I am feeling generous today. You have 30 of your days to give me your answer. Use this time to convince your leaders that submission is better than death." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Sarah said. "Do not thank me yet, little human. When you return, you will kneel before me and surrender your species. If you do not, I will show you what real power looks like." The Empress waved her hand. The alien guards moved forward to escort Sarah away. As she walked through the corridors of the massive ship, Sarah looked out through the windows. She could see the Zephyrian fleet spread out in space around them. Hundreds of huge warships floated in perfect formation. Each one was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their weapons could destroy entire cities with one shot. But Sarah was not thinking about the enemy's strength. She was thinking about something else. Something the Empress did not know. Something that might give humanity a chance. 3 hours later, Sarah was back on her own ship. It was tiny compared to the Zephyrian vessels, but it was fast. As soon as they were far enough away, she sent a coded message to Earth. "The fish has taken the bait," she said into the recorder. "We have 30 days. Begin Phase 2 immediately." The message would take 12 hours to reach Earth. But Sarah knew that preparations were already underway. For 6 months, every human colony had been working on the same secret project. Asteroid mining stations had been built in hidden locations. Shipyards had been constructed in empty space far from any planet. Millions of people had been working day and night on something the galaxy had never seen before. The Empress thought humans were weak because their ships were small and slow. She thought they were primitive because they had only been in space for 50 years. But she did not understand what made humans different from every other species she had conquered. Humans did not give up. When they faced a problem that seemed impossible, they found a new way to solve it. When they were outnumbered, they used their minds instead of just their strength. And when they were threatened, they worked together like no other species in the galaxy. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Empress Vexantha was meeting with her generals. They were planning the invasion of human space. It would be quick and easy, they agreed. Humans had maybe 100 ships total. The Zephyrian Empire had thousands. "Should we prepare for a long campaign?" asked General Krixtar, a tall alien, with 4 arms. "No," the Empress replied. "This will be over in days. Their ships are weak and their tactics are simple. We will crush them so completely that every other species will remember what happens to those who defy us." "What if they try to run?" asked another general. "Where can they run? We control all the major trade routes. We have allies in every system. Even if some humans escape, they will spend the rest of their short lives hiding in the darkness between stars." The generals laughed and began discussing how to divide up human territory after the conquest. Some wanted to turn Earth into a slave world. Others thought it would be better to simply destroy it as an example. The Empress listened to their plans with satisfaction. In 30 days, she would have her answer from the humans. They would submit, of course. They had no choice. And if they were foolish enough to refuse, she would make their destruction so complete that no species would ever dare to challenge her again. But as the days passed, something strange began to happen. Zephyrian scouts reported unusual activity in human space. Ships were moving between colonies in patterns that made no sense. Large amounts of materials were being transported to empty regions of space. When the scouts tried to investigate more closely, they found nothing but empty space and floating debris. "They are probably trying to hide their most important facilities," General Krixtar suggested. "It is what cowards do when they know they cannot fight." The Empress nodded. It made sense. Humans were clearly preparing to run or hide. This just proved how weak they really were. On the 29th day, Admiral Sarah Chen sent another message to the Zephyrian flagship. She would return tomorrow with humanity's final answer. The Empress smiled as she received the message. Tomorrow, she would add another species to her empire, or she would destroy them completely. Either way, she would win. She always won. The Empress had no idea that tomorrow would be the beginning of the end for her empire. She could not imagine that the small, weak humans had spent the last month preparing something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The countdown had begun. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her ship as it approached the Zephyrian fleet. Today was the 30th day. Today, she would give the Empress humanity's answer. Her hands were steady as she checked her uniform one last time. Behind her, the communication officer waited for her signal. "Open a channel to the flagship," Sarah ordered. "Channel open, Admiral," the officer replied. "Empress Vexantha, this is Admiral Chen. I am ready to deliver humanity's response to your offer." The reply came quickly. "Board my ship immediately, human. I grow tired of waiting." 20 minutes later, Sarah was back in the crystal throne room. The Empress looked exactly the same as before. Her red eyes glowed with impatience and anger. The alien warriors around the room watched Sarah with interest. Some of them seemed to think this would be entertaining. "Well?" the Empress demanded. "What is your answer?" Sarah took a deep breath. "The people of Earth and all human colonies have considered your offer carefully. We thank you for your generosity." The Empress smiled. "Good. You have made the wise choice. Kneel before me and speak the words of submission." "I'm afraid there has been a misunderstanding, Your Majesty," Sarah said calmly. "We did not come here to submit. We came here to politely decline your offer." The throne room became silent. The Empress stared at Sarah as if she had not heard correctly. The alien warriors shifted nervously. No species had ever refused the Zephyrian Empire twice. "What did you say?" the Empress asked. Her voice was very quiet, but everyone could hear the danger in it. "Humanity chooses freedom," Sarah said. "We respectfully decline your offer of vassalage. We will not submit to your empire." The Empress stood up from her throne. She was 3 times taller than Sarah. Her red eyes blazed with fury. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as her anger filled the air. "You dare refuse me again?" she screamed. "You pathetic, insignificant creature! Do you have any idea what you have just done?" "Yes," Sarah replied. "I believe I do." The Empress raised her hand. Energy crackled around her fingers. For a moment, it looked like she might kill Sarah right there. But then, she stopped herself. She had a better idea. "You want to see what happens to species that defy me?" the Empress said. "Very well. I will show you. Guards, take this human to the observation deck. I want her to watch as I destroy her entire species." The guards grabbed Sarah's arms. As they dragged her away, she could hear the Empress shouting orders to her generals. "Send the signal to all fleets. Begin the invasion immediately. I want every human world burning within the hour." Sarah was taken to a large room with windows that looked out into space. She could see the Zephyrian fleet beginning to move. Hundreds of massive warships turned toward human space. Their engines created streams of blue light as they accelerated. Fighter craft swarmed around the larger ships like angry insects. General Krickstar stood beside her. "Your species chose poorly, human," he said, "but do not worry. It will be over quickly." Sarah said nothing. She just watched as the fleet disappeared into the swirling tunnel of hyperspace. The ships would reach human space in less than 6 hours. "The Empress expected the war to be over by tomorrow." "The Empress wants you to see the recordings of each battle," the general continued. "She wants you to know that this is what happens to those who refuse her generosity." "I understand," Sarah said. What the general did not understand was that Sarah was not afraid. She was counting down the minutes until the fleet would drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Everything depended on perfect timing. 6 hours later, the first reports came back from the invasion fleet. Admiral Zekthor, the commander of the assault, appeared on the communication screen. He looked confused. "Your Majesty," he said, "we have arrived at the human home system, but something is wrong." "What do you mean, wrong?" the Empress demanded. "The human defenses are exactly what we expected. A few orbital platforms around their home world, some patrol ships, maybe 50 vessels total. But our sensors are detecting unusual energy readings throughout the system." "Explain," the Empress said. "There are objects in space that our sensors cannot identify. They appear to be large pieces of debris or asteroids, but they are giving off artificial energy signatures. And there are far too many of them, hundreds, maybe thousands." The Empress frowned. "Investigate these objects." "We are trying, Your Majesty, but every time our ships get close, the objects seem to disappear. Our sensors show nothing but empty space." Sarah smiled. She knew exactly what was happening. For 30 days, human engineers had been putting the finishing touches on the greatest military secret in human history. Stealth technology that made their ships invisible to alien sensors. Construction techniques that allowed them to build in space without being detected. And most importantly, a strategy that no alien species had ever imagined. "Your Majesty," Admiral Zekthor continued, "permission to begin the assault on the human home world. Whatever these objects are, they do not appear to be weapons." "Granted," the Empress replied. "Destroy the human orbital defenses and prepare to land troops on the planet's surface." The invasion fleet moved forward. Sarah watched the tactical display as 200 Zephyrian warships approached Earth. She felt sorry for them. They had no idea what they were flying into. "Beginning attack run on human orbital platforms," Admiral Zekthor reported. "Enemy defenses are offering minimal resistance. This should be over in—" The Admiral stopped talking. His image on the screen froze as he stared at something off camera. "Admiral," the Empress called, "report your status." When Admiral Zekthor looked back at the camera, his face was pale with shock. "Your Majesty, I need to revise my earlier assessment. The objects we detected are not debris." "What are they?" the Empress demanded. "They are ships, Your Majesty. Very large ships. And they are decloaking." The tactical display changed dramatically. Where moments before there had been empty space, now there were massive signatures appearing everywhere throughout the solar system. Not dozens of signatures. Not hundreds. Thousands. Sarah began to laugh. She could not help herself. The look on the Empress's face was worth everything that had led to this moment. Impossible, the Empress whispered. How many ships do they have? Admiral Zekthor's voice came through the speaker, but it was shaking now. I count 1,000 large vessels, Your Majesty. Each one appears to be the size of a battleship or larger. Our intelligence was completely wrong. The humans have a fleet larger than ours. The Empress turned to stare at Sarah. How? She demanded. How did you build so many ships without us knowing? You made 2 mistakes, Sarah said. First, you thought we were weak because our ships were small. Second, you thought we were stupid because we were new to space. But humans have one advantage that no other species in the galaxy has. What advantage? The Empress asked. We learn from our enemies, Sarah replied. For 6 months we studied your tactics. We studied your ships. We studied your empire. And we realized that you always fight the same way. Big ships with big weapons attacking other big ships. You never expect anything different. On the tactical display, the human vessels were moving into position. They were not attacking yet. They were just waiting. Your ships are impressive, the Empress admitted, but 1,000 ships cannot defeat my entire empire. I have fleets throughout the galaxy. You're right, Sarah said. 1,000 ships could not defeat your empire using your tactics. But we are not using your tactics. As she spoke, the human ships began to change. Each massive vessel started opening up like a flower. Huge bay doors slid apart along their sides, and from within each ship, something emerged that made the Empress step back in shock. Dear gods, General Krikstar whispered. What are those things? Sarah smiled. Those, General, are the reason your empire is about to fall. From each human ship came thousands of small craft. They were too small to be called ships. They moved too fast to be called fighters. They swarmed through space like a silver cloud, their numbers growing by the second. The Empress watched in horror as her tactical display was overwhelmed. There were not thousands of enemy contacts anymore. There were millions. Admiral Zekthor, the Empress called. Begin evasive maneuvers. Return to hyperspace immediately. But Admiral Zekthor did not reply. His ship was already surrounded by the swarm. The swarm moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Millions of small craft poured out of the human supercarriers and spread through space in patterns that seemed impossible. They did not fly in straight lines like normal fighters. They did not form neat formations like proper military vessels. Instead, they flowed through space like water, bending and turning together as if they shared the same mind. Admiral Zekthor tried to give orders to his fleet, but the human swarm was everywhere at once. His gunners fired their massive weapons into the cloud of tiny ships, but hitting them was like trying to catch raindrops with a net. The small craft moved so fast and changed direction so quickly that the heavy cannons could not track them. Focus. Fire on the nearest group, Zekthor shouted. Concentrate all weapons. His flagship opened fire with every gun it had. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled the space around them. For a moment, it looked like they were hitting something. Dozens of the small craft exploded in bright flashes, but for every one they destroyed, 10 more took its place, and then the swarm began to attack back. The human craft did not have big weapons. Each one carried only small guns and missiles, but they attacked together in a way that the Zephyrians had never seen. Hundreds of them would focus on one target at the same time. They would hit the same spot on a ship's armor over and over until it broke through. They would attack from all directions at once, making it impossible to defend against them all. The first Zephyrian ship to fall was a destroyer on the edge of the formation. The swarm surrounded it completely. Thousands of small craft attacked its engines, its weapons, its life support systems. In less than 3 minutes, the destroyer was dead in space. Its crew sent out a distress signal, but there was nothing the other ships could do to help. Fall back, Admiral Zekthor ordered. All ships retreat to minimum safe distance. But the swarm followed them. The human craft were faster than anything in the Zephyrian fleet. They could change direction instantly. Without slowing down, they moved like a school of fish, flowing around obstacles and reforming on the other side. Empress Vexantha watched the battle from her flagship. She could not believe what she was seeing. Her mighty fleet, which had conquered 100 worlds, was being torn apart by tiny ships that looked like toys. How are they coordinating so many vessels? she demanded. It should be impossible to control that many craft at once. Sarah Chen was still standing beside her, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. You are thinking about it wrong, she said. We are not controlling each ship individually. The ships are controlling themselves. What do you mean? The Empress asked. Each craft has its own artificial brain, Sarah explained. They can think and make decisions on their own. But they are also connected to each other through quantum communication networks. They share information instantly across the entire swarm. When one ship sees a target, they all see it. When one ship learns something new, they all learn it. The Empress stared at her. You gave machines the ability to think? We gave them the ability to fight, Sarah corrected. And they are very good at it. On the tactical display, another Zephyrian ship exploded. This time it was a heavy cruiser. The swarm had found its weak points and exploited them perfectly. The aliens had built their ships to fight other large vessels. They had thick armor in front and powerful shields around their main weapons. But they were not designed to defend against attacks from every direction at once. The human craft were small enough to slip through the gaps in the ship's defenses. They could fly inside the shield generators and attack the equipment directly. They could get under the armor plates and damage the systems underneath. They fought like antibodies attacking a virus, overwhelming their targets through sheer numbers and perfect coordination. This is impossible, General Krickstar said. No species fights this way. It goes against every principle of space warfare. That is exactly why it works, Sarah replied. You have been fighting the same way for thousands of years. You build bigger ships with stronger weapons. You expect your enemies to do the same thing. But humans think differently. When we cannot win with strength, we win with cleverness. Admiral Zekthor's voice came through the communications system again. He sounded desperate now. Your Majesty, we have lost 12 ships. The enemy swarm is adapting to our tactics faster than we can change them. Request permission to retreat from the system. The Empress clenched her fists. Retreat? The mighty Zephyrian Empire did not retreat from inferior species, but as she watched her fleet being destroyed, she realized she might not have a choice. Negative, she replied. Hold your position. Reinforcements are on the way. It was true. The Empress had called for help from 2 other fleets that were patrolling nearby systems. They would arrive within the hour with another 300 ships. Surely that would be enough to overwhelm even this strange human swarm. But Sarah was not worried about reinforcements. She was counting on them. The more ships the Zephyrians brought to the battle, the more they would learn about human capabilities. And every ship they lost here was one less ship defending their empire. The swarm was learning too. With each attack, the artificial minds became better at identifying weak points in Zephyrian ship design. They began to target specific systems, in a precise order. First, the engines, to prevent escape. Then the weapons, to remove the ship's ability to fight back. Finally, the life support and command systems, to force surrender. Some Zephyrian crews tried to surrender when they realized their situation was hopeless. They broadcast surrender signals and shut down their weapons. The human swarm stopped attacking these ships immediately. Instead of destroying them, the small craft surrounded them and waited. It was clear that the humans wanted prisoners, not unnecessary deaths. This confused the Empress even more. Why are they not destroying the surrendering ships? She asked. Because we are not monsters, Sarah replied. We fight to protect ourselves, not to commit genocide. Any crew that surrenders will be treated with respect according to the laws of war. Laws of war? The Empress laughed bitterly. There are no laws in war. There is only victory and defeat. That is another difference between humans and your empire, Sarah said. We believe that how you win matters as much as winning itself. The first wave of reinforcements arrived an hour later. 300 fresh Zephyrian warships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately began moving toward the battle. Their commanders had been briefed on the situation, but they still could not believe what they were seeing. The human swarm had grown larger. More supercarriers had arrived and deployed their own clouds of small craft. The space around Earth was filled with millions of tiny ships moving in impossible patterns. They looked like a silver storm that covered half the solar system. Admiral Yaltesh commanded the reinforcement fleet. She was an experienced officer who had fought in dozens of campaigns. She had never seen anything like this before. Form up, For coordinated assault, she ordered her fleet. Target the large human ships. If we can destroy their carriers, the small craft will have nowhere to return. It was good strategy, but it did not work. The human supercarriers were not sitting still like normal capital ships. They were moving constantly, staying behind the protection of their swarms. When the Zephyrian fleet tried to approach them, they were met by walls of small craft that moved to block every attack. The battle turned into a nightmare for the Zephyrians. They were used to fighting enemies that stood still and traded shots like gentlemen. The human swarm did not fight like gentlemen. They attacked from every angle at once. They used the wreckage of destroyed ships as cover. They coordinated their movements so perfectly that they seemed to be reading the aliens' minds. By the end of the day, the Zephyrian Empire had lost over 200 ships. The humans had lost maybe 1,000 small craft. For the first time in her long life, Empress Vexantha faced the possibility of military defeat. Recall all remaining ships, she ordered. Fall back to the edge of the system and wait for further orders. As the surviving Zephyrian vessels retreated, the human swarm did not pursue them. Instead, the small craft began returning to their carriers. Within an hour, the space around Earth looked almost normal again. The supercarriers had activated their stealth systems and disappeared from alien sensors. But everyone knew the war was far from over. This had been just the first battle. The Empress still commanded thousands of ships throughout the galaxy. She would not give up easily. Sarah Chen was returned to her own ship as part of a prisoner exchange. As she prepared to leave the Zephyrian flagship, the Empress spoke to her one last time. "This is not over, human," the Empress said. "You may have won this battle, but I will destroy your entire species before I allow you to defeat my empire." "We will be ready," Sarah replied calmly. As Sarah's ship flew away from the alien fleet, she sent a coded message to Earth. "Phase 3 is authorized," she said. "It is time to take the war to them." Empress Vexantha stood in her private chambers aboard the flagship, staring out at the stars. For the first time in 800 years of rule, she felt something she had almost forgotten: fear. Not fear of death, for she had faced that many times in battle. This was something worse: fear of losing everything she had built. The reports from the battle at Earth played through her mind over and over again. 200 ships lost, thousands of her best soldiers dead or captured. All destroyed by tiny craft that moved like insects and fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. She activated the communication array and sent out messages to every corner of her empire. Within hours, representatives from dozens of alien species appeared on her screens. Some were her loyal vassals who had served the empire for centuries. Others were newer conquests who still remembered their freedom. All of them had heard about the disaster at Earth. "The human threat must be contained," the Empress announced to the assembled leaders. "They have developed weapons that could destroy everything we have built. If we do not act now, their swarm technology will spread to other species. Our entire way of life is at risk." Governor Thexara of the Mentari sector was the first to speak. His people had been enslaved by the Zephyrians for 300 years. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider negotiating with these humans. If they are truly as powerful as you say—" "Negotiate?" the Empress interrupted. "You forget your place, Thexara. The Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate with inferior species. We conquer or we destroy. There is no third option." But as the meeting continued, the Empress could see doubt in many faces. Some of her vassals were wondering if the humans might offer them a better deal than eternal servitude. Others were calculating whether it would be safer to switch sides. Before the war went any further, Admiral Koloran of the Third Fleet raised a practical concern. "Your Majesty, our intelligence networks report unusual activity in several sectors. Ships moving without proper authorization, trade convoys changing, routes. Some species appear to be preparing for something." The Empress knew what that something was. Word of the human victory was spreading faster than her ships could travel. Oppressed species throughout the galaxy were beginning to hope for the first time in generations. If she did not act quickly, her empire would collapse from within. "Send messages to all loyal fleets," she commanded. "I want every available ship to converge on the Zephyros system. We will make our final stand at the homeworld." "Your Majesty," General Krixtar said carefully, "are you certain that is wise? If we concentrate all our forces in one place, we leave the rest of the Empire undefended. The rest of the Empire will not matter if we lose, the Empress replied. The humans must be stopped here and now, before their rebellion spreads any further. But the Empress had one more card to play. Deep beneath the surface of Zephyros Prime, her ancestors had built a weapon of unimaginable power. The Void Lance was a planet-killing device that could destroy entire worlds with a single shot. It had been used only twice in the Empire's history, both times to make examples of species that refused to surrender. The weapon had been dormant for over 1,000 years. Bringing it online would require enormous amounts of energy and dozens of technical specialists. But if the humans thought they could threaten her homeworld, she would show them the true power of the Zephyrian Empire. Meanwhile, in human space, Admiral Sarah Chen was meeting with the leaders of Earth's military. The victory at Earth had been spectacular, but everyone knew it was just the beginning. The Empress would not give up after one defeat. Intelligence reports suggest the Zephyrians are pulling back their fleets from the outer territories, reported General Harrison, the head of Earth's Strategic Command. It looks like they are preparing for a major battle somewhere. Where? Sarah asked. Most likely their homeworld. Zephyros Prime has the strongest defenses in their empire. If they are going to make a stand, that is where they will do it. Sarah studied the tactical projections on the holographic display. Zephyros Prime was located at the center of a heavily fortified star system. The planet was surrounded by orbital defense platforms, minefields, and automated weapon satellites. The approaches to the system were guarded by massive fortress stations that could destroy entire fleets. How many ships are we looking at? She asked. Conservative estimates put their total force at over 3,000 vessels, General Harrison replied. That includes everything from destroyers to super dreadnoughts, plus whatever planetary defenses they have prepared. Sarah nodded. It would be the largest space battle in galactic history, but she was not worried about the numbers. The human swarm tactics had proven effective against traditional fleets. The real concern was what other weapons the Zephyrians might have prepared. What about the Supercarriers? She asked. How many are ready for deployment? All 1,000 are operational, replied Admiral Torres, the head of the carrier program. We have been producing additional drone craft around the clock. Current estimates put our total swarm strength at over 10 million individual units. 10 million. Sarah could barely imagine that many ships working together. Each drone was controlled by an artificial intelligence that could think and react faster than any biological mind. When they worked together, they created something that was greater than the sum of its parts. But there was another factor that made Sarah confident about the coming battle. For weeks, human agents had been making contact with oppressed species throughout the Zephyrian Empire. Not all of them were ready to rebel openly, but many were willing to provide intelligence about enemy movements and defenses. The Mentari had provided detailed maps of the Zephyros system. The Cathara had given them information about Zephyrian ship designs and weak points. The Veltorians had shared data about Imperial communication codes. Piece by piece, humanity was learning everything they needed to know about their enemy. There is one more thing, General Harrison said. Our agents report that the Zephyrians are activating some kind of superweapon on their homeworld. Details are sketchy, but it appears to be capable of destroying entire planets. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. A planet-killer weapon changed everything. If the Empress was willing to use such a device, she might destroy Earth even if it meant losing the war. Desperate enemies were the most dangerous kind. Do we have any information about this weapon? She asked. Only rumors and fragments, Harrison replied. It is called the Void Lance. Supposedly, it has been hidden on Zephyros Prime for over 1,000 years. If the reports are accurate, it could destroy Earth from across the galaxy. Sarah thought about this for a long moment. The logical response would be to attack quickly before the weapon could be prepared. But that would mean fighting the entire Zephyrian fleet at their strongest defensive position. It would be a terrible risk. On the other hand, waiting too long might give the Empress time to complete her preparations. If the Void Lance was real, Earth could be destroyed before the human fleet even arrived at the enemy system. How long before we can be ready to move? Sarah asked. 48 hours, Admiral Torres replied. We need time to finish loading supplies and complete the final system checks on the carriers. Make it 24 hours, Sarah ordered. If the Empress wants to use a planet killer, we need to stop her before she gets the chance. As the meeting ended, Sarah remained behind to study the tactical data. The coming battle would determine the fate of both species. If humanity won, they would free the galaxy from thousands of years of oppression. If they lost, the human race would be extinct within days. But as she looked at the numbers and strategies, Sarah felt something that surprised her. She was not afraid. Despite facing impossible odds against an enemy with superior technology and numbers, she felt confident. Humanity had already proven that they could defeat the Zephyrian Empire. Now they just had to do it one more time. The key was not to fight the enemy's battle, but to force them to fight humanity's battle. The Zephyrians expected a traditional fleet engagement with massive ships trading fire at long range. Instead, they would face something they had never prepared for. Sarah activated her personal communicator and sent a message to every human colony and military base in known space. This is Admiral Chen. In 24 hours, we will launch the final phase of Operation Freedom. Every human ship, every soldier, every citizen has a role to play in what comes next. The galaxy is watching. Let us show them what humanity can do. As her message spread across human space, thousands of ships began moving toward their jump coordinates. The largest military force in human history was preparing for the battle that would decide everything. On Zephyros Prime, the Empress felt the vibrations through the planet's crust as the ancient void lance began powering up for the first time in a millennium. Soon, she would have the power to destroy any world that defied her. The final battle was about to begin. The space around Zephyros Prime had never seen so many ships at once. 3,000 vessels of the Imperial fleet hung in perfect formation around the homeworld, their weapons charged and ready. Massive defense platforms orbited the planet like metal moons. Energy shields created a glowing barrier that could stop the strongest attacks. This was the heart of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Empress Vexantha stood in the command center deep beneath the planet's surface. Around her, hundreds of technicians worked to bring the Void Lance online. The ancient weapon required enormous amounts of power. Energy conduits as thick as subway tunnels carried electricity from fusion reactors spread across 3 continents. The air hummed with barely contained forces that could crack a planet in half. "Status report," the Empress commanded. 60%. "Power and rising," replied Chief Engineer Molterra. "We will reach full charge in 8 hours. After that, the weapon will be ready to fire." 8 hours. In 8 hours, the Empress would have the power to destroy Earth itself. Even if the humans somehow won the space battle, they would have nothing left to return to. Their home world would be a cloud of radioactive dust drifting between the stars. "Your Majesty," Admiral Colran called from his position at the tactical display. "Long-range sensors are detecting hyperspace disturbances. Multiple contacts approaching from several directions." The Empress smiled. "How many ships?" "Difficult to determine. At this range, Your Majesty? The humans appear to be using some kind of sensor jamming, but based on the size of the disturbances, I estimate no more than 200 vessels. 200 ships against 3,000. The Empress almost laughed. Even with their swarm tactics, the humans could not possibly hope to win such an uneven battle. They were flying to their own destruction. "All fleets to battle stations," she ordered. "This ends today." Across the Zephyros system, alien warships powered up their weapons and prepared for combat. Captains who had served the Empire for decades checked their battle plans one final time. This would be the greatest victory in Zephyrian history. Future generations would remember the day the Empress crushed the human rebellion and restored order to the galaxy. But Admiral Sarah Chen had not brought 200 ships to fight 3,000. She had brought something much more dangerous. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, exactly where the Zephyrians expected them. But as the enemy sensors focused on the new arrivals, something unprecedented happened. The fabric of space itself seemed to shimmer and bend. Reality twisted like heated metal as massive objects began materializing from nothing. One by one, the human supercarriers decloaked. Not dozens of them, not hundreds. All 1,000 carriers appeared simultaneously throughout the Zephyros system. They had been hiding in hyperspace pockets, using technology that the Zephyrians did not even know was possible. In an instant, the tactical situation changed completely. "Impossible," Admiral Colron whispered. "They cannot have that many ships. Our intelligence was wrong," the Empress said coldly. "It does not matter. Numbers alone will not save them." But even as she spoke, the human carriers began opening like deadly flowers. From each massive vessel came thousands of small craft. The swarm that had devastated the Zephyrian fleet at Earth was nothing compared to this. 10 million drone fighters poured into space, creating a cloud of metal and energy that covered half the star system. The Zephyrian fleet tried to maintain formation, but the human swarm was everywhere at once. Unlike the previous battle, these drones had been specifically programmed to fight in the enemy's home system. They knew the locations of every defense platform, every minefield, every weapon satellite. Human intelligence networks had provided detailed maps of the system's defenses. The first targets were the automated defense satellites. Thousands of small drones attacked each platform simultaneously, overwhelming their point defense systems through sheer numbers. Within minutes, the outer defensive ring was gone. The path to the planet was open. "Focus fire on the large ships," Admiral Colron ordered. "Ignore the small craft and target their carriers." It was the same strategy that had failed at Earth. But the Zephyrian commanders had no other option. Their entire military doctrine was based on destroying enemy capital ships. They did not know how to fight an enemy that had no capital ships to destroy. The human carriers were not sitting still like traditional vessels. They moved constantly, using their superior speed and maneuverability to stay ahead of the heavy Zephyrian guns. When enemy fire got too close, they would vanish into hyperspace for a few seconds before reappearing somewhere else entirely. Meanwhile, the drone swarm was systematically dismantling the Zephyrian fleet. The artificial intelligences had learned from every previous battle. They knew exactly where to hit each type of ship for maximum effect. They coordinated their attacks with perfect precision, sharing information instantly across millions of units. A Zephyrian super-dreadnought, the pride of the Imperial fleet, found itself surrounded by thousands of tiny attackers. The drones were too small and fast for the ship's main guns to target effectively. They swarmed over the hull like metallic insects, cutting through armor plating and disabling critical systems. Within 10 minutes, the massive vessel was dead in space. Empress Vexantha watched the battle from her underground command center. Her mighty fleet was being destroyed before her eyes. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being torn apart by enemies they could barely see. "How much longer until the Void Lance is ready?" she demanded. 4 hours, Your Majesty." "Chief," Engineer Moltara replied, "but the humans are concentrating their attacks on our planetary defenses. If they break through—" "They will not break through," the Empress said. "Activate the planetary shield generators. Nothing will reach the surface." A dome of energy appeared around Zephyros Prime, protecting the planet from orbital bombardment. The shield was powered by the same reactors that fed the Void Lance. It could withstand the combined firepower of 100 fleets. But Sarah Chen was not planning to attack the planet directly. She had studied the intelligence reports about the Void Lance carefully. The weapon was incredibly powerful, but it had one critical weakness. It required an enormous amount of power to operate, power that came from fusion reactors on the planet's surface. "Begin Phase 7, Sarah ordered from the bridge of her flagship. Throughout the battle zone, human drones began changing their tactics. Instead of focusing solely on enemy ships, they started targeting the planet's infrastructure. They attacked the power transmission lines that carried energy to the Void Lance. They disabled the communication arrays that coordinated the planetary defenses. Most importantly, they began a coordinated assault on the fusion reactors themselves. The drones were too small to penetrate the planetary shields, but they did not need to. The power conduits that fed the shield generators were outside the protective barrier. If those conduits were severed, the shields would fail and the planet would be defenseless. "They are attacking our power grid," Chief Engineer Moltara reported in panic. "If they destroy enough reactors, we will not be able to maintain the shields or charge the Void Lance." The Empress finally understood what the humans were doing. They were not trying to destroy her fleet or conquer her planet. They were trying to disable her ultimate weapon by cutting off its power source. It was brilliant and terrible at the same time. "Send all available fighters to protect the reactors," she ordered. "The Void Lance must be preserved at all costs." But it was too late. The human swarm had already identified the most critical power stations. Millions of drones converged on these targets, overwhelming the defenses through sheer numbers. One by one, the massive fusion reactors went offline. The eye-dead lights in the command center flickered as power levels dropped. 60% power and falling, Molterra reported. If we lose much more, the weapon will not be able to fire. The Empress made a desperate decision. Redirect all power from the planetary shields to the Void Lance. We only need one shot to destroy Earth. But, Your Majesty, without the shields, the planet will be defenseless. Do it! The Empress screamed. The energy dome around Zephyros Prime flickered and died. For the first time in its history, the Imperial homeworld was vulnerable to attack. The human drones immediately began descending toward the planet's surface, but they were not carrying weapons of mass destruction. Instead, they carried something much more precise. As the swarm approached the planet, they separated into thousands of smaller groups. Each group had a specific target, a power relay, a communication center, or a section of the Void Lance installation itself. The artificial intelligences had analyzed the weapon's design and identified every critical component. The Empress watched in horror as her ultimate weapon was systematically dismantled piece by piece. The drones were not destroying the Void Lance randomly. They were carefully removing specific parts in a precise order, ensuring that the weapon could not fire while minimizing unnecessary damage. 40% power and dropping, Molterra reported. The weapon cannot fire at this level. 30%, 20%, 10%, power offline. The Void Lance is inoperative.